All right, this works. Yes, this works. We're going to do this panel in English.
Thank you for coming.
Because some of the people we're going to speak to are English natives. Yeah, very grateful to be here today and talk to you guys a bit about all things data and e-com. Just a bit background on myself and why Adrian asked me to moderate this panel. So I'm Max. I've been in e-com for the last 15 years. Last thing I did on the e-com side was I was the CMO at YFood, scaled that to 50 people in marketing and around 100 million revenue. And obviously data was a core part or a core reason why we were so successful. And after that, I started a company called Klar, which is a data reporting and attribution tool for e-com brands. Been doing that for 4 years now, have around 500 e-com customers in Germany we work with. And among those, also the three great people that are going to join me on stage now, which is Lisa from the Femaly Company, Laura from Her One, and Oscar from Sunday Natural. So if you guys are ready, hello? Can you maybe please all come and join me, and you can all give them a massive applause. Hey, yeah. All right. Thank you guys for taking the time. Before we jump into the topic, I mean, you all work for very well-known brands, but still maybe we can start left to right by you introducing yourself, who you are, what your role is, and what company you work for.
Yes, so hi, I'm Laura. I'm the CMO at Her One. We are a female health and wellness brand selling supplements for women to support them at every stage of their lives, and I'm in charge of the whole marketing and sales.
Hi everyone, my name is Liz. I'm a director of revenue at the Femaly Company, pretty similar to what Her One is doing in terms of vision, but we're more toward fashion. We're producing product for menstruating people, especially period panty in that area. And I'm leading, well, the D2C team in Doch.
Hello everyone, I am Oscar. I'm the marketing director for Sunday Natural. We are a brand that sells vitamins, minerals and supplements and some other small categories that we try to get into. I'm very good at the Google shopping game. I do get involved in that, so I think there's some exciting things maybe at some point to talk about on that. And other than that, I look after influencer CRM in the director marketing role.
All right, cool. As you can see, quite a bit of expertise from really great brands that we have here. And I want to kick things off with getting right into the juicy parts, because I often feel that, especially smaller brands I speak to, they kind of like struggle to understand how they can use data and how they can turn data into action, real business outcomes. So maybe for each of you, can you maybe share one or two things where you leverage data in a way that turned into like a real, well, success for your business, or really changed the way you operate as a business and or how you sell your product to your customers? Whoever wants to go first. I don't feel I should always go left to right, so whoever wants to jump in first, feel free.
I can start. So for me, it's basically, or for us as a team, it's basically two things. One is obviously optimizing daily operational workflows based on how to increase our efficiency and these things within the teams, within our marketing operations. But the other one that for me is the much bigger lever is, at the end of the day, how to ensure keeping the focus. In a startup atmosphere, you always have to choose and between a lot of opportunities on how to scale, expand, and all these opportunities can at the same time also become your biggest blockers if you stretch yourself too thin, trying to do too many things at the same time. So leveraging data, looking at where the money actually comes from, and trying to focus on that, and sometimes leaving out things on the left, on the right, but really doubling down on what works, is for me the key aspect of how we use it and how we learned how to get better in like scaling.
Yeah, I also always say that focus is kind of like the scarcest resource you have as a startup. But maybe let's get a bit more specific, and like what was the thing that you kind of like saw and identified that you then kind of like focused on and put everything else aside?
Listening to our consumers, what they want and what they do not want it to have, and then improving our product portfolio. So we relaunched our bestseller. We actually killed it and brought up a new product on the market that became our new bestseller, so to say. and making sure that we do not stretch ourselves too much trying to put and bring different products on the market, but rather focusing on the bestseller, getting better in selling it, trying to understand how we can even further improve it by using data, asking customers, and iterating on the formula, etc. Was one of the most recent stunts, which was quite risky because we literally killed our bestseller.
Did you also see that, I don't know, conversion rates or lifetime values of those customers improved after you relaunched the bestseller?
Yes, because we launched it with subscription, and that kicked off nicely.
All right, Lisa.
I think, I mean, it's not recent, it's 2 years ago. We were not where we wanted to be in terms of profitability and revenue, and what we did was an extensive deep dive into each channel, trying to figure out which one we would kill completely to be able to put money on the most efficient one. So at the time, we had a marketing mix made of influencer marketing. We were at the beginning, scaling up already, but not there yet. We had Meta, we had Google Ads, and a few other things. And basically what we end up doing is completely withdrawing our investment into Google Ads and Meta and saying we're not gonna invest there anymore. We're gonna put all the money onto influencer marketing, because the touch point on Meta and Google Ads were, yeah, of course important, but they were too expensive for our business at the time. And we also internally had the resources for influencer marketing, but not for the two other in-house, So we said, okay, let's kill it. Let's see what happened. Let's jump into influencer marketing massively and see what happened. Hopefully we don't die. Hopefully that worked out good. And it did, actually. We became a very, I think we're known for being an influencer brand. We put a lot of, money, obviously, but also time and investment in our relationship to influencers. And that has brought us to a very good ROAS. I won't say profitability yet. We're still a startup, almost there. But that has worked out, but it was a big bet. And what we noticed is that we lost 30% of our revenue only, but we improved all the other KPIs massively. And that has worked out for us very, very well. So,
have you since diversified back again to more channels?
We are doing this. What we noticed is that by the end of the last year, then this strategy started to not work anymore that much. We noticed that influencer marketing was dropping within the conversion funnel, more closer to the conversion, to the conversion and less to our new audience. So we started reinvesting in other channels, but step by step, and making sure we don't overpay or we don't pay more than what we can afford on each channel. So yes, we're doing that now.
Yeah, it's also a thing I see quite often where brands are struggling to acquire customers at an acceptable cost per customer acquisition. And then they try to diversify, thinking that diversity is key to bring that down. But in reality, that actually makes you even weaker, because, well, it's super competitive out there, right? So it's always better to be exceptionally great at one thing than to being like meh at like 5 of them. So that really focus what we talked about before, and then narrowing in and being great at one thing is always going to outperform you than being meh at a few things. At YFood, we scaled to like 20 million on one channel and like 100 million essentially on 2 channels, right? So you can scale on these channels if you're like a Meta or influencer or Google or maybe probably TikTok now as well. You can get very big by just being on 1, maybe 2 of them instead of stretching yourself super thin. Oscar.
Good. Yeah, I think also quite similar as an initial step to what Lisa said. When I first joined Sunday, this is only about a year ago or so, we were not diversified necessarily massively in terms of marketing spend, but definitely diversified in terms of how much resource and time we allocate to this, and quite similarly looking at what is our return on investment here, and really understanding that more thoroughly. We decided to kind of shift a lot of that back into our most successful channel, which is Google Shopping, and as a result of that, we've now, over the last few months, probably scaled the investment into that quite a bit, and we do see quite good numbers. But as the nature of the business is that we have a very wide range of products, which really does provide a really good proposition for Google Shopping, because for whatever search term there is, we will have the right product that shows up. And we have largely managed the business based on averages, so we assume that everything has the same kind of profitability, we assume that everything has the same kind of lifetime value, and the only really inputs that we see the differences in price point, for example. And recently, and I think this is definitely thanks to GetClar as well, we've really tried to start diving into the kind of lifetime value on a product level, and this is where we really have seen that there is a huge difference whether somebody is a customer that buys a product like, let's say, ashwagandha with us, or a customer that buys a magnesium or an omega-3 product, and that's really we're still in this process for sure, but that really does allow us to reshape the way that we think around how we do our marketing and get a little bit more clever in terms of also driving the right customers based on the right, acquiring them on the right product.
Yeah, I've also always say, you know, when it comes to e-com, you essentially have a triangle you have to optimize against at the same time. You have to acquire a customer, you have to retain them, and you have to make money from them. And just always looking at silos, right, often can lead you to the wrong decisions. Similar to what you said, we had another customer that, you know, spent heavily in their marketing on this one product, which was great to acquire a customer, but the lifetime value was really bad, so they ended up actually not making a lot of money there. And so like really always looking at these things holistically and optimizing holistically to optimize for the best long-term outcome is critical, and one of the things where data can really help you. Now, moving to the opposite side of the coin, which is the struggles in working with data and what you've experienced there, because I often also get, well, told by customers, hey, especially with my team, they're not so experienced with data, like they don't know what to look at, they kind of get a bit lost in the data. Like, how have you managed that process when you know, wanted to introduce a data-driven approach or data-driven way of working in your team? What was the problems that you faced and how did you try or manage to overcome them? I'm going to start with, you know, Lise, to mix things up a little bit.
Should I start? That's a very good question, actually. I think it's hard. I mean, change management is hard. So, well, my team is now pretty big. We started with 1.5 FTE in my team, and now there are 15 people. So it grew very, very big. And what we're doing right now is moving from a focus on revenue to a bit more focus on profitability, and we're slowly trying to introduce customer lifetime value, and it's really hard to change the mindset of the team if they work with a target of revenue. What we do is we have the OKR, which is a framework we work with, and define the focus for the team. That has worked quite well, and to that also on the individual level, we have a system of scorecards so that they know what they're working as KPIs, and so we can make then those KPIs very present. Instead of saying, hey, this year you have to achieve a revenue of X, we said you have to achieve that ROAS, you have to achieve that CLTV on your channel. But it is really hard to put that in the head of the team when they used to work with another KPI, which is currently the struggle I'm experiencing. So I don't know exactly how to answer your question. I know what we've been doing until now, and trying to change the mindset and the way we work is, a bit long, and I don't know what to answer more than that.
Well, maybe one of the other two has overcome that problem already and can share some more.
I wouldn't say overcome, but in the process of overcoming the problem. I think for me, data, like I love data. I jokingly said to Max the other day, like my favorite pastime activity is having a glass of wine and going through our GetClar dashboards. But I think the first thing you have to do is appreciate that maybe not everyone has the same kind of drive and passion for understanding these things. But what I do realize is that when you try to explain things to people and you really try to engage them in going through the thought process and how you review a dashboard, and not just showing how you set up a dashboard, but how you interpret this and what you do with it, that they do really, really engage with it. So the other day, I take the credit for it, but I summarized the GetClar Academy, and I shared this within my team, and I can really see on the Google Docs that people are constantly going in this and really trying to learn from it. But I think that aside, like outside of how do you make your team be more data-driven, something that I've also really noticed both here at Sunday, but also in my previous jobs. Previously, I used to work for the Hut Group. I used to work for a brand called MyProtein, which is also, I would say, a relatively successful e-commerce brand and very, very data-driven. But what the two companies have in common is that we have simplified data. At the Hut Group, everybody was a country manager or whatever manager, business owner, and everybody was running towards revenue. Is it the most optimized? Business strategy? Possibly not. But by simplifying what the KPIs that you're going towards and making this understandable, I think everybody has a clear
path of where you need to go. And I think I can see this now at Sunday as well, where we jokingly sometimes say we try to manage channels on a 2.4 ROAS, and that's the minimum that we need to achieve. And if you achieve that, you can do more of it. And I think that makes it very tangible for people to understand which direction they need to run in. So I think one takeaway for me is simplicity can also be key.
Yeah, I agree. You know, sometimes you get lost, and simplifying things down can make it. It's okay to lose a bit of accuracy because it allows you to move forward. I personally prefer then having a bit more of a compound metric that, for example, takes like something like profitability into account. But if you have a very, you know, similar product portfolio, that might not even be necessary. Laura?
I completely agree with what Oscar said. I think he summed it up nicely. At the end of the day, it's about breaking it down into digestible bits and pieces and making it understandable for the team. So I think probably that's the best way to go to get them used to work with that and have then this little success of experiencing, hey, okay, I can work with this now, I understand it. And then based on that, I mean, as soon as you're there will be another few questions popping up anyway, and then you can kind of level up the skill set, so to say, based on that.
Yeah, I think getting in wins early, even if they're small wins, to just build confidence for people, and then like just building on top of that is really important. And I think also, as a leader, having the empathy to know that not everybody might be operating on the same level that you are, and just sitting down with them and just really, sometimes you might even feel stupid from the point you were explain things how actually work. I also use it at whiteboard where we sit down, it's like, okay, this is how our business works. And I was at a whiteboard and drew up a P&L and explained lifetime value and all that stuff so that they could like slowly but steadily kind of like get to that same foundational understanding of data, and it takes some time. But I think that's really critical to build up that education, get those wins in, and then kind of like build out that data-driven approach from there. One thing I want to touch on that you kind of briefly touched on, Oscar, before, is you obviously worked at now some brands doing 9 figures, so over 100 million in revenue, but then you also in the interim worked for a brand that was a bit smaller. So just curious to get your take on, you know, the value of data between those different types of businesses, or, you know, just like in terms of working with data, what are the core differences that you see between those two types of companies?
Yeah, in a smaller, like having worked for a smaller business, it's the person that is looking at the data is probably also most of the time the person that might be actioning on something. Whereas when you get bigger and you have more people involved in this, and maybe somebody has a specific job to look at data, derive insights, but that might not necessarily be the same person who's operationally executing upon this. And I think really finding that kind of pathway on how you have the insights lead to actually operationally doing things differently, I think that's a big challenge that you have to overcome as you scale and want to keep data a central part of the business. At times, I think it might actually be easier to work data-driven at a smaller business than it is at a larger business. Yeah, I'm overcoming this. I wish I had the answer. We're definitely working on it, but I think, again, it's just about really trying to bring the team into it, and also as a leader, taking your responsibility in emphasizing or enabling maybe the people that derive the insights and giving them the power to actually challenge and consult the people that are operationally executing things.
Mm-hmm. Now, you obviously had some larger companies before, but now to Lise and Laura, when do you think, you know, as a company starts to grow, when is the right point in time when they should get serious about their data, and when can they still like not just ignore it, but not make sure that they're like in a really strong foundation there?
I would say as soon as you start spending budget, actually, to be able to really like define proper hypothesis, validate whether or not you're doing the right things, and if you're even able to scale up. Like I've seen companies growing quite fast, not really knowing where the revenue was actually coming from, just because they enjoyed a little hype. And then after 1 or 2 years, they basically didn't have money anymore because they never really understood who their customers are. And in order to understand it, you need to invest into a certain setup right from the beginning, as soon as you start spending money, I would say.
I would say from the beginning on. I think even when your activity is quite small, just the fact that you lay down hypotheses of things you want to reach, you're already gathering data, right? You're already saying, hey, I want to achieve whatever revenue was, number of clients, doesn't matter. You're already laying down data. Even if it's in a Google Sheet, even if it's very basic, you have to do it from the beginning, or that's at least how I see it. Also probably because I never really worked in companies that don't do data, so that's maybe where it comes from. I'm very biased, but I think it's easier to know where you want to go or what you want to do or what the impact of what you're doing, even with a Google Sheet, even if it's very basics, yeah, from the beginning.
Yeah, also.
I would also maybe just say 2 cents on this. I think it's also about setting a culture, right? Like when you get serious about data, it's about, if you want to have a data-driven culture, I think you need to be serious about this in the beginning. How you implement that into the business, I think that's a secondary question. But if you want to, even when the company scales, you want to be a data-driven company and not base it on, oh, I don't know where my revenue is coming from. It's also how the leadership kind of embodies how data-driven decision needs to be made. So I think the earlier the better is definitely the answer here, right?
Yeah, I also think that, I think at the beginning, I think it can be super simple, just like a P&L, just really understanding on a day-to-day basis, how much am I making, how much am I spending, where's my money going. I think it's super crucial just to actually stay alive, in many situations as well. But you can keep that simple. I think at the beginning, what you got to before, no, I think you was with the customer feedback. At the beginning, I think focusing on qualitative data. So like, what do my customers think? What do they like? What do they want from me is a lot more important, because you're not going to have so much data anyway, right? Where you can actually get real insights maybe yet. So really focus on getting a lot of qualitative data and building a culture of being focused on the customer first, which is I think crucial initially, because you always have to do something that the customer is going to love. Otherwise, you're not going to have a business in the midterm. I think it's the first step while keeping finances in check. And then when you get to like 50K in monthly revenue, you get to a point where you have enough data to actually extract some real insights, and then really double down on getting on a strong foundation there. What I've also experienced in some cases where marketing leaders such yourself would, wanting to get better data, but then got some pushback from like the founders or something who maybe didn't come from like a marketing background, but more of a product background or a design background. So just wondering if any one of you has been in that situation before, where they got pushback on wanting to invest into better data, and then how you kind of made that argument to the founder that it's something that's necessary.
Maybe I start. Not so much pushback on getting the infrastructure. Sometimes it's about analyzing the data without any bias. That can get us into discussions here and there, which is then nice to have it like literally black on white or on the screen to like go deeper and explain where we stand and what our pain points are, and what is realistic to expect versus what is not possible at the moment. So not really the infrastructure, but rather how do we work with our reports and analysis, taking out any bias and really putting the customer in the center without our own assumptions and such.
Yeah, I have kind of the same answer. Defining what we're looking at, the question I have at the Female Company, but at previous company was, but what is the real ROA of that channel, like in a silo? And you try to explain, well, a customer journey is many touch points. Like, it's very difficult. Like, it's more around how you approach data more than having data. I think it's pretty much every startup or, well, companies say, yeah, data is important, but how do you interpret those? What do you do with this? How do you combine them with qualitative data is more the question than actually having it. It sounds kind of obvious nowadays to have it, but more, how do you interpret it? That's where the challenge is, and the long discussions.
That brings me then also nicely to my next point. You all also use our attribution tool. So just curious on as to why you said you need an independent attribution tool, and how that kind of like changed the way you operate as a company or as a marketing team.
I'm hoping there's no Google, Facebook, and whatever people here that I'm gonna insult. But I think if there's one thing that I'm really seeing over the last, I don't know, 9 months, like obviously we've had a lot of news I think around our company with the strategic investor coming on board, and this definitely led to many agencies and companies reaching out to us. And what I've noticed is that the agencies that are successful are not necessarily the ones that can drive the most value, but the ones that can show that they're driving the most value. So they find these little small mechanics, whether it's you have a standard referral program, 10% to your customer, 10% to the existing customer. Normally this is shared by a link. No, now we found a way to do it by name sharing, such that the new customer only has to put in a name, which can lead to obviously quite high levels of fraudulent data, but maybe this is a very successful way of showing that you are very successful as a business. And I think in its own way, in its own right, I believe Google might be doing this, I believe Facebook might be doing this, and this is, I think, where an attribution model really cuts through that noise and gives you a lot more certainty about the value that individual channels provide. Looking at, you know, Google, they only know their own touch point, so they attribute every single touch point that they have with the customer entirely to the ecosystem. Facebook does exactly the same thing, but an attribution model is able to kind of cut through that noise and help you make better decisions.
Yeah, similarly as well, I don't trust Meta and Google as own attribution model. So having the view on cloud that we have currently, what it's really helpful is really understand, so a few things, and among them is where is that channel within the customer journey? Are we more on a colder audience, or are we closer to the conversion? That is very important, because then that comes with the budget we want to allocate, but also the targets. If I'm having a channel that addresses a very cold audience, I'm not expecting ROAS of 5. That is completely not working, obviously. So we use this attribution to understand where it is, but also how every channel is participating to the final conversion. And it's been really useful. That's how we identify that right now our strategy of going massively into influencer is not serving us anymore. It used to serve us, but not anymore, and that we need to make the marketing mix a bit broader. Yeah, because it was not reaching a cold audience, driving a lot of existing customer at CPOs that were too high compared to the AOV. So that was a clear conclusion from the attribution model, and looking on different direction, because every attribution model have their advantages, but also their disadvantages. They all have different bias, and looking on different angles, I think it gives a bit of as more subjective as we can be with data to make decision. So that's how at least we approach it.
Yeah, I do agree. I also think it's a very powerful method to bring everyone in the marketing that is like putting resources into acquiring or retaining customers, into looking at it from different angles, removing friction or useless discussions around. If I would sum up every revenue that each channel is reporting based on their own attribution, we would be making a lot more revenue than we actually do. Yeah. But looking at different angles, trying to map the customer journey as much as possible, trying to figure out how to combine it with results of post-purchase surveys, and or incrementality tests if we really want to understand a bit more what the impact is of a certain channel. I think it's really powerful to just eliminate a lot of friction where teams put their heads together trying to understand how to serve the customer better instead of fighting for a few percentage of the total revenue.
Yeah, I think also, you know, beyond the data, especially if you're a large organization, I think one of the biggest things that attribution can hopefully do, if everybody is on board with it, is can create alignment. Because many times you're just arguing and arguing and arguing, and the biggest advantage that you as a small company have towards, you know, those large things like Amazon and Otto is speed, right? You can move faster, and you should, like, if even the attribution tool can help you to stop arguing and just moving, that already by itself is worth a lot, right? And so I think that's also something that's actually a customer said to me, hey, I don't know if your attribution is good, but we stopped arguing and we can actually get some stuff done, and I like that, right? So I think that's really powerful.
Makes sense.
Final question, I think, before we open up for some questions from the audience is, let's quickly talk about retention, And like, what are the things that you're looking at data-wise when it comes to retention? Is there like a North Star KPIs your retention team or the entire team is optimizing against? So what's your view on that? Maybe Oscar?
The nature of our product is a very high retention product, right? Like you buy a bottle of capsules or whatever it is, you consume it and you finish it and you have a self reminder because I finished it and I want to buy it again. So the nature of the product is quite a sticky nature. You definitely see that in our retention rates, and I think what we really try to focus on within the retention team at the very least is how do we understand the incrementality of our actual retention mechanisms that we have in place above and beyond the kind of natural stickiness of our incrementality. Because it's very easy to kind of hide behind, oh, we have customers coming back on average 2.x times a year, but what of that is actually driven by the incrementality of an email channel where you're driving, where you're pushing out a 10-20% discount code and potentially cannibalizing your margins. So I think that's the main thing, and we largely do this through looking at our cohorts and really trying to make smaller cohorts based on some user or product kind of conditions that we put in place, and then to really understand what a particular initiative or action or part of our strategy has done in terms of lifting up the cohort value at a specific time frame.
Then I think that's my turn. And I would say, I mean, I don't have a North Star for retention. And I think I can provide a bit of context because we're probably not the only business having this issue. Our business is quite recent, and our popular product, which are the period panty, also is pretty recent. And the nature of our product is completely the opposite of yours. You buy it and you have it for 4 years. It's like nobody's gonna come back buying new period panty every month. Like, no. So yeah, so if you look at when we started launching the first product, really like with a portfolio that is big enough to drive purchases, we're looking at like less than 2 years ago. So in terms of retention for a product that people buy at most every year, it's very small. So we have a lot of discussion at the moment on what is the KPI we should be looking at, and we're with the OKR system, we're like poking around, trying what we can actually touch, what we can actually control or influence in some way. For me, customer lifetime value seems to be the direction to go. A share of existing customers seems to be more the management direction. So we have a lot of discussion. The CRM manager has another opinion. So we're just trying to figure out what is working. And so I don't have an answer for that. I have my answer. But yeah, that's where we are at the moment, trying to figure that out.
We've been driven very focused on new customer growth for quite a while. So I think it's only since a year where we actually also focus on plugging in more retention drivers, so to say. For us, it's a lot about the second and third orders, because that's just, naturally, where then the probability and likelihood that they're going to reorder is just going to increase almost double, so to say. So that's why we focus a lot on the content, actually, that plays a huge role, like how to get, for us it's similar, we have to get users into the compliance of using the product and understanding what helps them to do that, so to say. So this is where we're testing a lot, trying to understand how to improve that further. And as I said before, we also launched our new bestseller in Q1 with subscription. So that's something where we're testing. We have not validated whether or not this is sustainable for us in the long run, but we're currently evaluating how much this is going to have an impact. Because at the end of the day, for us, it's a lot about the ratio of our customer acquisition cost and then the CM2 to understand how far can we go in scaling without risking our cash flows.
100%. Cool. If any of you wants to know more about retention e-commerce, actually at 5 p.m. I'm doing a masterclass with Phil in the background from Holy on all things retention e-commerce. So if you want to dive deep on that topic, retention and data, feel free to join us there. And I think I would conclude it here for now. First of all, thank you to the three of you for taking the time. And now looking forward to some more questions from the people in the audience that we can address. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. I have a question. I hope, Max, you will not be mad about it, but I would like to know, what did you guys try to get clarity about attribution before you used the fancy tool?
I can
and why didn't it work so?
So I can rather speak about different companies I worked at before, because at H1 we've always been using GetClar. I've seen different setups with own data warehouses, and then a mixture of last click versus discount code based, whatever. And the good thing about Claris, why we also still use it and keep using it, is that it's very simple to compare the different attribution logics. And that I experienced in the past, whether it was based on own data warehouse in Looker or Tableau or other data studios, that it was very complex for the team to use. And the more complex it is for the team to use and to understand the different logics behind, the less likely is that they're actually doing and using it. Yeah.
Similarly to you, I had a different model. So we had like our own warehouse, studio locker. We tried for a while at the Female Company. We're still partially using it, Tracify, which we don't find as flexible. It's mostly a tracking thing. What we really like in Tucla is really, first of all, it's cost effective for such a small structure. If you look at data warehouse, usually you have a lot of cost. We don't have a data manager. Like, we're a lean team, right? Well, we have a lot of people in marketing, but other than that, we have quite a lean team. So we really like how it's cost effective, it's clear, we can plug in different sources into it quite easily, even Excel sheet, which, Google Sheet, which is, I love it, I love Google Sheets. So yeah, I think it's, so of course, plugging our sheets into it is really helpful, because then you can shape the data in the way that match your company and not like in buckets that are made by whatever service you use. So yeah, very flexible, very accessible, and easy to use overall. So that's why we're using this.
I think what we've particularly liked about GetClar's attribution model is that it's quite close to what we believe the reality was. So there seemed to be some kind of correspondence between what GetClar was telling us and what we felt like.
That's a good thing.
let's find out. But we have also tried a few other attribution models, and some which are very kind of view and impression focused. And our business, we have quite a large amount of orders every month. It is not necessarily very hard for us to put a paid social ad live and find somebody that is most likely to convert anyways, which is actually very similar to somebody that's already going to convert anyways. And if you really maybe focus on some of the very view-based heavy conversion models, then you might actually find out that TikTok is surprisingly your most valuable channel. And I'm not saying that's by definition not the case, but I think with our kind of the way that our business is set up, it is very click-focused, and that's why we feel like when we use GetClar, it seems quite similar to what we perceive reality to be. And I think that's also important, right? Actually buying into the attribution model, like you said before. We don't know if this is the right attribution model, but at least we stop arguing about things, and everybody buying into it, I think, is super important there.
Any more questions? Nobody, really.
Too late.
Well, if there's no questions, then there's no question, and I hope that's because we answered everything. But either way, thank you again for your time and sharing your insight, and hope you all found it insightful and interesting. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Max.
Thank you.